Good morning. Good morning. God bless Alabama. And let me say to the men and women here, thank you for the incredible hard work you do each and every day. It's been nearly 20 years that I've been coming to ALEC meetings. And this is a hub of innovation. This is a hub of thinking. This is a hub of making a difference in each of our states across the country. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. Those are the words that Dickens began A Tale of Two Cities with. And I got to say, they describe very accurately where we are in this country. We are seeing wonderful conservative victories in this country. We're seeing a booming economy. We're seeing record low unemployment. We're seeing America safer. We're standing with our friends and allies stronger. We're defeating our enemies across the globe. In many, many respects, it is the best of times. But we're also seeing the reaction from the far left. As they're getting more and more angry, more and more extreme. As we're seeing the country get more and more divided. The polarization we're seeing, the bitterness, the anger, the rage, that's not healthy for a country. In those respects, it's the worst of times. I think the men and women here are critical, continuing us down the path of wisdom and not the path of foolishness. Now, we all just came out of an election the last few weeks. And that election had good and bad elements. Nationally, we grew our majority in the Senate. That was a good thing. But at the same time, we lost the House of Representatives. We lost some tough, tough seats, both in the House and in state legislatures across the country. Amen. The mistake to this last election in terms of a reaction would be for all of us to come back and be consumed with a spirit of timidity. A spirit of fear. Yes. The mistake would be for us to come back and sound like milquetoast Democrats. Right. I don't know that there are any milquetoast Democrats left. I mean, after all, you're in Washington, D.C., the town of Spartacus. Men and women of ALEC, y'all are innovators. And you are working day in and day out in the laboratories of democracy. Do you know that's what Louis Brandeis called federalism? Our 50 states. And we have an advantage. It's a powerful advantage. Our ideas work. Freedom works. If you look at policy and innovations that have originated in the states, that have flourished in the states, policy innovations like welfare reform, like school choice, like innovative healthcare approaches, it's the men and women here that are driving it. Federal government is often the last adopter. And when it gets to the feds, we manage to screw it up. And we know that our ideas work, so what that is a failure on our part of messaging. A failure of winning people's hearts and minds. Connecting the policies that we're fighting for to their lives, their children, their challenges, their hopes, their dreams. That's something each and every one of you can do. It's something I'm trying to do in the Senate, particularly as the House goes to crazy town the next 2 years. I'm hoping in the Senate to do everything I can to continue winning people's hearts and minds. And let me give one specific example to elaborate on a little bit, which is school choice. School choice is a deep, deep passion of mine. And of my 6 years in the Senate, the single legislative achievement that I'm most proud of concerns school choice. Last year, during the tax cut, I introduced the only amendment that was adopted on the floor of the Senate that added anything to the tax cut. And it concerned school choice. It concerned college 529 savings plans. Now, as you guys know, 529 savings plans are immensely popular. They're tax-advantaged saving vehicles whereby parents can save for college. My amendment expanded 529 so you could still save for college, but now you can also save for K through 12 education. You can save for public school, private school, parochial school, religious school, your choice, up to $10,000 per child per year. And I'll tell you, there was a little drama when it passed. This was late Friday night, actually early Saturday morning, about 1 in the morning. And when it came up for a vote, we knew it was going to be close. At the time, we had 52 Republicans in the Senate. When it came up for a vote, one Republican, Susan Collins, voted no, and then Lisa Murkowski voted no. So Tim Scott and I are both on the Senate floor talking to Lisa, trying to make the case for her to support this. Well, we're making the case. Behind me, Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, walks down and votes yes. It's an audible gasp. Now, when Susan and Lisa voted no, the Senate floor staff, they picked up the phone, they called the Vice President's office, they said, Mr. Vice President, looks like we may have a tie, we need you to come down. He was at the residence, so he got in the motorcade and began heading down to the Capitol. When Manchin comes and votes, Senate floor staff picks up the phone, they call the Vice President's office, they said, Mr. Vice President, turns out when Manchin voted yes, it looks like we don't need you can go back. So he turns the motorcade around and starts heading back to the residence. Well, Manchin goes back to his desk. And a horde of Democrats descend upon him. And they begin yelling and screaming. I think they actually brought out sticks and began hitting him. And about 5 minutes later, Joe walked out all sheepish. And he shifted his vote to a no. So the Senate floor staff picked up the phone, they called the Vice President's office. He turned the motorcade around a second time. It takes about 15 minutes to get from the Naval Observatory to the Capitol. About 15 minutes later, the Vice President walked on the floor of the Senate, said the ayes being 50, the nays being 50, the Senate being equally divided, the presiding officer votes in the affirmative, the amendment is adopted. And with that, we passed the most far-reaching federal school choice legislation that has ever passed in law. And that potentially benefits up to 50 million school kids nationwide. It also provides an opportunity for each and every one of you, because a great many states across the country provide state tax credits for contributing to 529s. Which, if there's state policy doing that, amplifies the effect of the change in federal law. So that's one area I'd encourage each of you to go back and say, with this expansion of this tax advantage saving vehicles, what policies can we on the state implement to give parents more power to save their own resources, grandparents their own resources, to empower and make educational choices for their kids? That there is an accelerator effect of state policy that encourages those contributions. It's also worth noting, on the federal level, what I initially introduced also included homeschoolers. Yeah. And unfortunately, Senate Democrats, they had a parliamentary move where they got the parliamentarian to strike homeschoolers out of the bill. And it was mean-spirited. It also struck out kids with disabilities who could have gotten disability therapy, and they just struck them out. And they won on that procedural fight with the parliamentarian. What that means is that's another opportunity for you. For states to step in, because the Democrats won a partisan victory there. I went to the Senate floor and asked unanimous consent to put the homeschoolers and kids with disabilities back in, and the Democrats objected. That means there's an opportunity for y'all to step in and provide greater choice, greater opportunity. What we believe in is empowering individuals, putting you in charge of your own life, giving you greater choice, greater competition, greater control over your future. That's a message that works. It's a message that sells. And so that's one area among many that I would encourage policy innovation. And you guys are on the battleground. 2020, we are going to see more money coming from the other side, more anger, more energy, more craziness coming from the other side than we have ever seen. And each of you delivering successes in your states, delivering successes that improve people's lives, and making the case, helping people understand why freedom matters, why the policy successes you're winning are making a difference for their kids and their future, I think that's critical to continuing us on this path to the best of times and not the worst of times. I'm honored to be with you. Thank you for your good work.